I'm Charlie Brown, Executive Director of Consumers for Dental Choice and President of the World Alliance for Mercury-Free Dentistry. On November 14, 2019, the Scientific Advisory Committee of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration held a hearing to reevaluate FDA's silence on amalgam. How do we get to this good point? 2 years ago, Consumers for Dental Choice enlisted 50 major nonprofit groups to sign the Chicago Declaration to end mercury use in the dental industry. Together, we demanded action from FDA. Then we filed a petition for action by FDA that 49,000 Americans, maybe even including you, signed onto. In other words, public pressure, appropriately and strategically used, has brought us to this point. Faced with overwhelming support for mercury-free dentistry, FDA put amalgam on the scientific committee agenda, and Consumers for Dental Choice came well prepared. We brought 16 expert witnesses to the FDA hearing to get our message across from a range of perspectives. Here are some highlights.
Other nations who joined Minamata have moved well beyond what FDA currently recognizes as their obligation to protect citizens here from mercury. We feel the government has a responsibility to its citizens to act to protect them.
As a practicing dentist who serves a diverse community, I assure you that we have mercury-free materials and can meet the individual needs of all our patients.
We believe that when we have a known toxicant that is continually released and bioaccumulates in the body to add to all of the other sources of mercury, and when we have a safer alternative that's widely used because it's preferable and affordable, then we must protect those who are most vulnerable to the health harms of mercury, especially low-income children and children of color. We call on FDA to immediately phase out the use of amalgam in pregnant women and children and to advise against public funding of amalgam for any use, as these programs serve the most vulnerable of our patients.
Mercury amalgams pose unnecessary and very preventable risks to our children's health and development. The Children's Environmental Health Network strongly encourages FDA to ban dental amalgam placement in all children, pregnant women, and breastfeeding mothers. FDA should also provide all consumers with full information about the health risks associated with amalgams, as well as require dentists to provide this information during consult. And dentists should be required to offer consumers the choice of mercury-free fillings. Finally, we encourage FDA to work toward ending all placement of new dental amalgam in the U.S.
My concerns are scientific and ethical. The neurotoxicity of mercury, the absorption into the body of mercury from amalgam, the conversion of mercury from amalgam into methylmercury, compounded by the pre-existing disproportionate rates of neurodevelopment disorders in children of color, and the probable disproportionate use of amalgam in African American and Hispanic children poses a public health challenge and a public health ethics dilemma.
I ask you to reconsider the position on the toxicity of mercury and follow the example of lead. After many years, we're now realizing that there is no safe level of lead. How many lives are you going to sacrifice before you realize that there is no safe level of mercury exposure to humans? If it's so harmless, then why is it that when the mercury fillings are removed, it looks like a hazardous waste site where the dentist has to protect herself, where the patient has to protect herself, where there's a mouth dam put into your mouth, where there's a respirator on your mouth? I just wonder, how can you possibly think something like this is so safe when removing it is so dangerous?
We know we have a problem with heavy metal with mercury contamination. It is no longer acceptable to assume small or even trace amounts of mercury is tolerable when it comes to the health of our most precious population, our children, especially when there are other harmless options for amalgams. The canary in this coal mine died years ago.
Third concern, only patients and not dentists know whether they are already exposed to mercury from these other sources. but polling shows that patients do not know about amalgam's mercury content. So absent patient labeling or patient warnings, neither patients nor their dentists are in a position to discuss, much less assess, whether mercury from amalgam is too much to add to their body's pre-existing mercury burden.
We know, and FDA acknowledges, that mercury vapor causes brain damage. We know that mercury vapor spikes when we place silver fillings and when we take them out. We know that unborn and young children might be especially sensitive to the harm caused by mercury vapor.
I'm off to the Minamata Convention on mercury next week. I'd love to be able to say that a panel in the United States is calling for strict action as is going on around the world. Thank you. Consumers for Dental Choice and the experts we organized had an impact on the FDA Scientific Committee. Here's what it concluded.
I think that the evidence is there because we can show an exposure and we know the behavior of these neurotoxicants in the developing brain of children.
But it seems like if a product came on the market today that said it's 50% made with a material we know is highly toxic, and we're only going to use it predominantly in disadvantaged populations, we wouldn't be having a meeting. You know, FDA would not approve it without a meeting.
My feeling is that mercury containing amalgam should probably be on its way out.
I think everybody would agree that mercury in the body isn't a good thing. I see no reason why it shouldn't be phased out as quickly as possible.
The trend seems to be that when there are alternatives available to the use of mercury, the general direction should be to move away from using mercury containing amalgams and towards non-mercury containing products to help with dental restorations. I think the panel generally feels that there are risks, there are gaps that exist with regards to dental amalgam, primarily relate to a lack of communication to the population at large, whether by the dentists or by the FDA or by our society at large, as to the risks, the potential risks of mercury-containing amalgams, and potentially more specifically in vulnerable subgroups like children. Now it's your turn. Will you help us keep the momentum we built at FDA? Dr. Joseph Mercola has issued the Mercola Challenge for those attending this conference. He'll match every dollar, up to $25,000 total, donated to Consumers for Dental Choice here or mailed to us from a participant by next Tuesday. So please, take the Mercola Challenge, whether you're a new donor or a current donor. Together, we can abolish amalgam once and for all.